I'm an assistant United States attorney here in Sacramento, and I'm in the Narcotics and Violent Crime Unit. And one of the things that I've seen in some of my investigations tend to be large-scale narcotics, firearms, trafficking cases. But one of the things that's coming up and that we're learning more and more about are good drugs gone bad. Prescription drug abuse in particular. And both me and our office and also our agents are seeing abuse of prescription drugs. And it's actually a very important national issue that's concerning to us because it affects people and their lives. And so I want to just give you an informational talk about some of the pitfalls of prescription drugs, prescription drug abuse, and again, this good drugs going bad. So I'm going to start off with a video to try to kind of personalize the issue for one community, and then I'm going to talk about some national trends after that. And so let's just start with this brief video, and then we'll get to some slides showing some of the national trends. There's additional sort of famous people who have struggled with abuse of prescription drugs as well, including football players, famous musicians, talk show personalities, and of course, sports injuries is one gateway to prescription drug abuse. A common path for someone who ends up becoming addicted or abusing prescription drugs would be to, you get an injury, a knee injury or a back injury, start taking the drugs, and then when those people don't need them anymore, at that point they're still addicted to it and continue abusing it. A couple of facts about prescription drug abuse. Prescription drug abuse has always been around, and in fact it's the nation's fastest growing drug problem, and it has been classified by public health professionals as an epidemic. Fatal drug overdoses have increased for 11 consecutive years, and this is somewhat old data, so it's probably even more than 11 years. And then additionally, opioid pain relievers have been involved in more overdose deaths than cocaine and heroin combined. So in our country right now, abuse of prescription pain medications, and specifically opioids, has actually caused more deaths than both cocaine and heroin combined, which is a very powerful fact. In 2010, which is some of the most recent data we have, there were 38,000, just north of 38,000 deaths from drug overdoses in the United States, and 22,000 of those deaths were from prescription drugs, and 16,000 of those deaths involved opioids. So again, the numbers are quite staggering and clearly a cause for concern. Again, this shows the trend line in prescription drug overdose deaths, and you can see over a series of the last 3 or 4 decades how prescription drug deaths have increased fourfold, and the graph here is quite stark and striking. Broken down, there's data on the left, shows that there are 105 deaths per day from drugs, and 42 of those per day from opioid abuse. And then that breaks down further between opioids and benzodiazepines, 70-30. Again, this is more of the drug overdoses. I'm going to have to, I'm going backwards here, sorry. Another striking fact is that prescription drug overdoses now kill more people than car crashes. And we can see that's a recent phenomenon, but the trend line for prescription drug overdose deaths is marching steadily upwards and is now more deaths are attributable to prescription drug overdoses than to motor vehicle crashes. Another way to look at the prescription drug overdose deaths, in red are the opioids, and that trend line is just striking. It's continually increasing over the past decade, and kind of shows a comparison of the prescription drug-related deaths to other drugs such as heroin and cocaine. Not just deaths, but also emergency room visits. Again, there's a very striking trend line between the trend in emergency department visits involving non-medical use of narcotic pain relievers. So this would be non-medical drug abuse of narcotics and of pain relievers in particular. And that increase just over a 6-year period has been quite striking, jumping from 166,000 to more than 425,000 over those 6 years. And in addition to being a national problem, this is also a California problem. And in fact, if you look at the numbers for Sacramento, those are some of the most striking in the state. The Sacramento appears, based on this data here, to have the most prescription drug deaths, overdose deaths per 100,000 of population. And Sacramento is the highest of any of the major cities in the state. So not just a national problem, but it's also a local problem for us. And it's something that it's really important that we're aware of, generally speaking, for our community. Now, the top prescription drugs that are being abused, there's 3 main categories. There are the pain relievers, like codeine, fentanyl, morphine, hydrocodone, oxycodone, stimulants like Ritalin and Adderall, and then depressants, Xanax, Valium. So there's a whole range of prescription drugs that are being abused, and it's not just a couple of things. It's not just pain relievers, it's not just depressants, but it's really the gamut of everything. Again, commonly used opioids, hydrocodone is the most commonly abused opioid, and then OxyContin is also very commonly abused. In terms of the most dispensed pharmaceuticals, hydrocodone consistently is the most dispensed pharmaceutical drug, of them all. And so that's why we're seeing potentially the biggest abuse from hydrocodone. It's quite striking, the numbers, the overall numbers of prescriptions of hydrocodone. This graph is showing oxycodone sales in California. Again, the purpose of the graph is just to show that the oxycodone sales are incredibly high. And again, I had been discussing some of the statistics for oxycodone abuse, for pain reliever abuse. And this just shows kind of the tremendous volume of prescription drugs out there. And one of the reasons I'm talking about that is that these drugs are out there. They're prescribed in great numbers, which means there's a plentiful supply. And so, a patient who might be taking a small amount of them might have some left over. And that's really where the concern is what do we do with once they're no longer needed for medical use? Are they getting taken by family members or kids or are passed around? And so it's just important that we're cognizant of the fact that there's a very large supply and that the drugs are very dangerous if not used correctly. Again, interestingly enough, cough syrup is another prescription drug that's commonly abused. Stimulants like Adderall, as I said before, are another commonly abused prescription drug. And so really it's everything. Some of the teen beliefs and behaviors from surveys done of teenagers are revealing. Every day, approximately 2,500 teens use prescription drugs to get high for the first time. So that's not using it for a medically necessary reason. It's using it just to get high. And these are quite striking numbers. Many teens mistakenly believe that pharmaceuticals are safer than street drugs for a variety of reasons. They're medicines. They can be obtained from doctors, pharmacies, friends, or family members. It's not necessary to buy them from traditional drug dealers, and information on the effects of these drugs are widely available. So there are these beliefs that teenagers and young people have that lead them to prescription drugs, when in fact prescription drugs can be just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than the cocaines and heroines of the world. Again, responses and surveys of high school students are very revealing. Overall, 1 in 5 students admitted to taking prescription drugs that were not prescribed to them. That's a tremendous amount. 20% of high school students took prescription drugs for a non-medical purpose. That's a huge number. And those drugs included Adderall, OxyContin, Percocet, Ritalin, Vicodin, Xanax, again, across the gamut of prescription drugs. Again, I have a series of charts on the prevalence. Again, this is another striking set of statistics about the use of prescription drugs among young people. This slide shows the use of prescription drugs amongst 11th graders, both in California, and this is a slide for Orange County. And it shows, striking numbers, 17% of 11th graders in California using painkillers, smaller amount using barbiturates and sedatives, but then it jumps up to nearly 25% or 22% using cold and cough medicine, and then smaller numbers using diet pills and stimulants. Again, just very large, disturbing numbers of young people, teenagers, high school students who are experimenting with prescription drugs. This again is just going through some of the things that teenagers typically do not know, and some of the effects that abusing prescription drugs can have in terms of increasing blood pressure and heart rate, causing damage to the brain and other organs, leading to accidental overdose, poisoning, causing physical dependency and or addiction, disrupting breathing, leading to risks associated with mixing multiple drugs or combining drugs with alcohol or other substances, and causing seizures and even death, as we talked about earlier. The facts and statistics, again, as we said, prescription drugs serve a very important purpose, but it's important that our communities, are cognizant of the fact that when prescription drugs are misused, they can really cause incredible amount of pain and suffering in the community, and that it's just important to kind of know what the risks are, because it's something that many people don't really know about, even though it really is a big issue. So I have a couple more slides, but at this point, if anybody has questions, generally speaking, about prescription drug abuse, national trends, local trends, I'd be happy to answer any questions. But I really just wanted to provide some information and make sure that the folks in this community are familiar with, the problem, and so that it's not something that surprises anybody or something that's hidden from view.
Thank you.
Thank you.